When it came to choosing the perfect film to discuss for our favorite holiday, we decided to go a little bit of a different route than our typical selections. Up until now, we've focused on films that have quite healthy budgets. So we thought, why not do something a little different? And what's a more perfect horror film done on a shoestring budget for just such an occasion? Of course, it's John Carpenter's Halloween. It was completed with a budget of around $325,000 in 1978, adjusted here for inflation. And despite that, not only did the cast and crew manage to create an instant horror classic, but they managed to help to shape the future of the entire genre in terms of the aesthetic, starting with the opening scene of the film. Even without the intro text, we immediately know a few things. Someone is approaching the home, stealthily. Someone who came from behind something, and who's moving very slowly. We can attribute this shot to the new technology of the time, the Steadicam, which was fast becoming popular. Other things that we immediately know is that there likely aren't many people home, as we only see a few lights on. The cool blue light washing the exterior of the home helps to cast soft shadows, like some uncertain darkness stalking toward the safe, warm confines of the interior, which are illuminated with more warm tones. Then, of course, the complementing orange jack-o'-lantern would have told us at least that we were near Halloween, even if the intro text hadn't. There's a lot of layering with light and shadow, which carries throughout the movie. You see it in this exterior shot of the front of the house, and even more when Michael peeks through the side window. Note again the cool light in the right to the foreground with hard shadows, giving way just through the window to warmer light, a bit more cool light coming from the TV set, bringing a bit of that cold outside world into the safe, warm interior. And then back again further away to the warm light in the foyer. The shadows in this scene, which I mentioned are a little harsh, are very cleverly done here, as well as in other parts of the film. You can just watch those and not pay any attention to what the characters are doing, and have a good idea of what's going on. This is telling us to keep an eye on the shadows as the film progresses. That play of cool and warm, harsh and soft shadows, light and dark, continues as Michael makes his way through the house, keeping us, the viewers, on edge, waiting for what's next. After the murder of his sister is complete, and he's revealed as a child, the tones shift. The lights are all on in the house, and the entire place is glowing with warmth, almost as if, despite the horrible thing that's happened inside, the threat is now gone. These clever lighting and color tactics are used in every single nighttime scene of the film. One thing that we noticed is that the outside of Tommy Doyle's house, while in shadow and with some blue tint, is not quite as dark, blue, or contrasted as the Wallace house. For most of the film, the Doyle home is the safe harbor from the horrors occurring across the street. Of course, all of that changes after Laurie ventures over to find her friends have been brutally murdered in the darkness of the Wallace house. The Doyle house becomes unsafe and dark itself, almost as if the evil clinged to her from that moment forward. As we know from the sequel and other Halloween films, the evil was always following Laurie, Michael Myers' little sister. But the initial reasoning for her being the one who remained unharmed is that she was more situationally aware. While she was part of the group, she was almost a bit of an outsider because she was smart and she took things seriously.
I forgot my chemistry book.
So who cares? I always forget my chemistry book and my math book and my English book.
This made her more observant, more complicated, and more perceptive to things that were going on around her. The classic horror slasher trope that this film would establish of have sex and you die was not intentional. It was merely convenience that these kids who were so distracted by other things were the ones who would miss all of the warnings, miss glimpses of Michael waiting to pounce, and would therefore end up making for easy prey. With such a limited movie budget, lighting was used in very clever ways to make us wonder what, or who, is hidden in the darkness, to highlight things, or people, the director wants us to see, to create hard and soft shadows in an effort to distract the viewer to various parts of the screen, and to create depth. All of these are done to create tension, mystery, thrills, and most of all, horror. For the setting, co-writer Deborah Hill wanted to evoke the sleepy small-town atmosphere in which she had grown up in Haddonfield, New Jersey. In order to create a fall-weather, small-town environment in sunny Southern California, the crew turned to specific streets in South Pasadena, Hollywood, and Burbank. In stark contrast to much of Los Angeles, the selected locations are areas that, to this day, have incredibly large trees that shade their respective streets. This helped to shield out much of that intense sunlight that just isn't present for most fall days in the Midwest. In addition, these areas, South Pasadena in particular, have a very small-town feel to them. South Pasadena has a main street, Mission Street, and is incredibly walkable. It's the perfect stand-in for the fictional town of Haddonfield, Illinois, a place that seems safe, protected, well cared for, and cut off in its own little bubble, but which had an evil past lurking within. A place where, as Hill noted, you could, quote, pull off the veneer and have a peek inside, something that inspired her from Hitchcock's Rear Window. South Pasadena was used for Michael Myers' house, which Wallace quickly found, as it was the type of old, sketchy-looking house that probably had its own urban legends, especially around Halloween.
I'm not afraid. Bull. I'm not. Go in.
The home, at the time being used for storage by a nearby nursing home that owned the property, was in perfect condition for the film, meaning it was completely dilapidated and needed little adjustment to portray the abandoned Myers home that we see in 1978 Haddonfield. The Century House, as it's now known, was built in 1888, the same year that South Pasadena was incorporated, making it one of the earliest homes to be built in the area, and a real standout from its neighboring craftsman-style homes, which dominate the town. About a decade after filming, the home was in danger of being demolished to make way for the craftsman-style apartment buildings that now occupy the Myers and adjacent lots. South Pasadena council member David Margrave knew that the house was important and needed to be saved. With the stipulation of moving it within a week, he bought the house for literally a silver dollar and hired a crew to move it down the street next to the railroad tracks at Meridian Avenue and Mission Streets, where it still stands today. For the opening shots, Wallace and his crew took 2 days of the 20-day shooting schedule to complete minimal painting, patching, gluing up of wallpaper, and throwing in some lights and furnishings, in order to make the home appear more currently lived in and habitable. As he says in an interview with LA Magazine, quote, "The logistics were insane," as he recalls the paint still drying, even as the cameras began to roll. Other notable locations in South Pasadena that you'll see in the film: Laurie Strode's house at 1115 Oxley Street, the hardware store, which is now a modern Indian restaurant at Mission and Meridian, the famous hedge behind which Michael Myers stares at Laurie and Annie, located on Montrose Avenue south of Mission Street, and even South Pasadena High School, where my husband, the other half of CineStructure, attended school. You can actually see the house that he grew up in right down the street from Laurie Strode's house in the film. By the way, if you happen to be in South Pasadena around Halloween, the owners of the Strode house have left a pumpkin outside on the stoop. You'll see a lot of people stopping to pose with it. The other major locations in the film are the Doyle and Wallace homes, where Laurie and Annie babysit Tommy Doyle and Lindsay Wallace. In that same LA Magazine article, which I already mentioned, and for which you'll find a link below, there's a funny tidbit about why the initial home in South Pasadena that was to be the Doyle house was not used, and why a new location had to be scouted. Evidently, Tommy Wallace, the production designer for the film, among many other hats that he wore, stopped by the private home to measure the bedroom closet, as a set piece needed to be made for the interior shots, and they wanted it to match as closely as possible to the real thing. The housekeeper let him in, and he didn't realize until after he was done measuring that the owner was actually asleep in the bedroom where he was. He quietly crept out and managed to not disturb her. Unfortunately, however, it got back to her that he was in the room while she was sleeping, and by the time he returned to the production office, the location was off the table. But hey, this could have happened to anyone. The actual locations for the Doyle and Wallace houses are private homes in Hollywood, so please don't go dropping in on the owners or snooping around. The Doyle house exterior, built in 1928, is located at 1530 North Orange Grove Avenue, while the interiors were filmed at 1533 North Orange Grove Avenue. The Wallace house exterior, built decades later in 1962, is located at 1537 North Orange Grove Avenue, while the house interiors were filmed at 1542 North Orange Grove Avenue. The Wallace exterior looks very different today, as the porte cochere was enclosed to create a garage with a second-story addition above. These are more large and stately houses than many you'd find in South Pasadena, due to the logistics and space required to fit cameras and crew inside. Being able to drive by these sites is a fun pilgrimage for fans of the Halloween franchise, a horror classic, reportedly the only slasher film to reside in the Library of Congress. From its cleverly selected locations, amazing cast, terrifying villain that scared us half to death merely wearing a white painted Captain Kirk mask, and subtly haunting soundtrack, Halloween is more than the creation of slasher and horror tropes that are still used today. It's an iconic piece of film history that preys upon our darkest fear, that there is always evil lurking. Happy Halloween! Thanks for watching. Is there anything you'd like to add? Any films you'd like for us to cover? Leave a comment down below. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to check out our others. Give us a like, a subscribe, and follow CineStructure on social media.